So, welcome back to 3rd Age Reforged and to DONAZ KARAK, which is a new map, or at least it's a new custom scenario, that was given to me by Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud, and as you can see, it is the remnants of a Dwarven mine, which there's an interesting setup to this scenario actually, from the looks of things. It looks as though the mine itself lies vacant for the time being, and indeed you can see from here that the town centre is actually owned by the forces of evil, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains today. So they are going to be able to walk into and occupy this vacant mine as the dwarves try to scramble to retake it, as they have obviously let their guard down and allowed the goblins in. So it's going to be quite an interesting one, this, fairly lengthy as well. So we'll go through the armies first and foremost, starting off with Eclipse himself. We've got some Mountain archers here, which they are a scenario only unit, and they do offer the Misty Mountains a slightly stronger archer than they would otherwise have, which is, again, I mean, they are on the defence here, so you could say that it's quite necessary for them to have something like this. Personally, though, I think some of these scenario-only units are kind of a cop-out, really. They do allow certain factions to have units of a level which they really shouldn't. And I do feel as though with the Misty Mountains, you know, heavy goblin archers combined with heavy goblin crossbows gives them the skirmish power they need. So to rely on a slightly stronger archer with stats that are from a previous version of the game, I think is a bit of a crutch that they shouldn't be able to rely on. But nonetheless, they are here. And they do fit in with the Misty Mountains aesthetically anyway, so that's nice. Heavy goblin spears. So again, armor-piercing spears. Armor-piercing going to be very useful against the dwarves that are going to be coming towards them. But of course, the quality levels and discrepancy is going to be quite large. So we'll see how useful they actually are, but they should be good for holding down a front line for some slightly better units, maybe to get some good damage done. More heavy goblin spears are in there, as well as some more archers. There's also some mountain orc berserkers in there, I believe, as well as some crossbowmen. So yeah, again, lots more AP, and some more monstrous units back here as well. Some cave trolls, some drake broodlings, which could be really, really useful if they can get around and charging in and amongst the dwarven lines. But again, they're a very all or nothing kind of unit. They can either lay waste to their enemies or they can be absolutely useless. We'll see what happens in this battle. White Uruk Fearmongers, so again some good halberdiers. They will of course be outclassed by something like the First Legion if they are on display today, but they should be pretty good against most other Dwarven units with that range they have and the big AP values. Blackback Mountain Berserkers, a couple of units of them actually, as well as the Goblin King's Bodyguard, and the Mangonel, which the Mangonel unfortunately in Reforged doesn't seem to be as stable as it is in Silmarillion Total War, so I do hope that the Mangonel doesn't cause me to crash later on in this game, because then all the good vibes will be gone. Lango is playing as another force from the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. Again, Mountain Uruk Host, a good unit of line infantry, especially for the Misty Mountains standards, but they will still be outclassed by the dwarves in this case, but they do offer a more solid frontline combatant than something like the heavy goblin infantry, of course. A couple of units of them, a couple of units of fearmongers to back them up, and then a huge horde of heavy goblins by the looks of things. Heavy goblin halberdiers, of course, nowhere near as strong as the White Uruk fearmongers in front of them, but they can still be quite efficient with that phalanx of theirs, backed up by heavy goblin spears, offers a decent amount of AP as well. Heavy goblin archers will be able to do the business at long range, as well as the heavy goblin crossbows, a slightly shorter range. We'll see what Khazad-Dum do there. Snow trolls currently hiding. A lot of fast moving trolls, as well as the Bolg's champions. So lots of heavy goblins. The Goblin King Bodyguard are back there as well, so overall a slightly lower quality army than Eclipse has got, but he does have some fast movers and he does have the numbers which should be quite useful for defending the mine itself. We also have Inarius, who has got some cave troll drummers, got some cave trolls, some Blackback Mountain Berserkers, some heavy goblin crossbowmen. We've also got some heavy goblin archers, some Mountain Uruk Host, heavy goblin halberds, some mountain orc berserkers. So again, like a decent core here, backed up by some heavy goblin halberds, which should be okay. Heavy goblin crossbowmen, more blackback mountain berserkers and Goblin King's Bodyguard, some cave trolls back there as well, and some heavy goblin infantry on the front line, which will of course really struggle against the quality of the dwarves overall. And finally, Dollar Elf, who it seems has got a more similar army to the one that Lango has got. He's got some cave trolls, he's got some Bolg's champions. He's got another Mangonel up on the hill, so again that's something I'll have to watch out for. Heavy goblin crossbowmen, spears. We've got some White Uruk fearmongers as well. We've got some heavy goblin spears in here. Some Black Uruks of the Mountains, the first instance of them. Their skills should be quite useful, but of course the lack of AP might hurt them a little bit against the heavily armoured dwarves. But they should still do pretty well in conjunction with the Mountain Uruk host of at least putting up a fight, and the Blackbacks can of course do a lot of damage. Now though, let's have a look at the force of dwarves that's going to try and reclaim this land for themselves. We have Bevin, who's playing as the first Khazad-Dum army. He's got some Sons of the Fallen, some Orc Hunters. They'll have plenty of Orcs to hunt here. Lots of Miners, which probably isn't going to help them all that much actually in this situation. I mean, yes, they're AP, but some decent forces on display for the Misty Mountains here, and I really don't think Miners are going to offer that much to the front line. They're going to need to be backed up very quickly in order to make their presence worth it. Sons of the Fallen and Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum here as well. Some upgraded 4th Legion Shield Guard. There are the Rams, of course, on display. We've got some 3rd Legion Infantry upgraded as well. We've got some 2nd Legion Axe Guard also upgraded, so all of the Legion units are upgraded. So a lot of quality on display in behind the Miners at the very least to offset the number of them. Meteor Guard are here with their 3 hit points, and of course the 1st Legion, which are going to be peerless when it comes to a grindy engagement. Up here we have got King Ammar, who has got some Hammers of Gundabad up on the higher ground. We have got some Legion Bodyguard, some more Hammers of Gundabad. Further down, some Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, which will be really good if they can get into range, but they do need to dodge the crossbows for that to be the case. But he has also got a slightly lower quality army elsewhere. He still has the Miners and the Sons of the Fallen, but most of the other units are standard Khazad-Dum fare with Warriors, Sentries and Orc Hunters. Then we have WK, who is actually very, very close to Eclipse's initial army. I wonder if he's allowed to take pot shots as they retreat. I can't imagine there's any other reason for starting the defenders out here other than to give the attackers the opportunity to take those pot shots, so we'll see. Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum are in a position to do so. Hammers of Gundabad Unbreakable, of course. Sentries to back things up. More Orc Hunters and some Sons of the Fallen. Hammers of Gundabad a large amount of Unbreakable units. I'm not entirely sure what's happening over here. Hopefully that doesn't come into play, because something really gets under my skin about that. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks quite disturbing, doesn't it? 4th Legion Shield Guard, Hammers of Gundabad, and some 1st Legion Pikes are in there as well. And then, at the far back over here, towards the edge of the map, we have Mr. Sneakman, who's got his Miners way back here, a big contingent of them once again. Again, Warriors of Khazad-Dum. In behind, he's got some Legion units as well, Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, Orc Hunters, some more 3rd Legion, lots of Legion units as well as the Orc Hunters, Sentries of Khazad-Dum at the back, and some Legion Bodyguards. So a similar army to the one that was in the middle from King Ammar as well. So, without further ado, let's begin. The Mangonel does fill me with a little bit of dread, to be honest with you, because it's always been a problem child for me in terms of the crashes that it inflicts upon me. Oof. This big blob of units, as soon as it spreads out, hopefully we can get away from the lag. It's worth saying as well that it looks like one of the textures hasn't properly been applied to the outer walls, but you get the idea here. This is obviously an orcish-made palisade which they have hastily erected around their newfound spoils of war. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Misty Mountains actually set the table here, because I think they still have a large amount of numbers at their disposal, so a wider engagement may not actually be the worst thing in the world for them. Having said that, they do still need to bank up on the choke points to a certain extent, but if they bottle themselves up too much, stuff like a lot of the Dwarven quality units, the Legion units in particular, should really come into their own. We shall see if that proves to be the case. Some higher ground back here as well that could be utilised potentially for Dollar Elf's forces, and he is indeed moving his Mangonel up to the higher ground. That is going to be a slight concern for the Dwarfs, as well as obviously the potential crashing implications that it could have for me. The Dwarfs are also not going to want to march through the Mangonel fire, because it could end up doing a lot of damage to them, and they can't afford to take too many losses here. They're on the attack against a numerous host from the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, and it will be quite interesting to see how they stack up. WK has managed to rescue his men from the cliffs as they all make their way down. Hammers of Gundabad are going to be very useful here though, because the Mangonel isn't going to be able to break them, of course. Huge AP damage on them as well, which is going to be useful against pretty much anything that the Misty Mountains has at their disposal, to be honest with you. They don't have a lot in the way of skillful units. Their trolls are going to be felled by the Dwarven shock infantry as well, but not allowed to take pot shots at them on the retreat, which I find kind of weird, to be honest with you. The deployment zones were such that there was sort of a Dwarven deployment zone within the settlement itself, but obviously none of the armies could move their units anyway, so they couldn't. It was kind of pointless in the end. But I wonder why the scenario was made in that way. This is a little bit interesting over here. You can see the snow trolls are actually moving around this way. Don't want to get too close to Bevin. I mean, I assume this is a grace period at this point. You can see King Ammar is marching down from the hills, but obviously they've got quite a way to move the dwarves, and they're not exactly known for their swiftness. These lightning effects are actually quite obnoxious. But there's nothing that can be done, I suppose. Again, like these snow trolls, they're going to have to be careful, like trolls, the Misty Mountains on this occasion, because they don't have quite the same level of survivability as some of the other factions' trolls. And there's a lot of shock infantry on display for the Dwarves. The Bolgs champions, be interesting to see if they can be utilised well, because if the Misty Mountains do bottle themselves up, do hem themselves in, they lose the potential of using those lancers to good effect. We'll just have to wait and see about that, won't we? Oh man, that lightning effect is... I've brought attention to it now as well, so you're probably all noticing it as well, but it's really bugging me. No matter. I'll do my best to try and forget about it. Heavy Goblin Spears marching across the bridge. Some of these units still yet to get across the bridge. I do think there should be a bit of a set time limit going on here, because I feel as though the Misty Mountains have made a bit of a mess of getting across these bridges, to be honest with you. And you can see they put their artillery into the way. Yes, it would be a big loss for the Misty Mountains to lose their artillery in such a fashion, but they've really bungled this. And I feel as though if players do that, I feel as though they should be punished for it, but that's just my opinion. I'm sure that they won't, because people in scenarios are obviously very courteous to one another, but I do feel as though there is cause in some cases for being a little bit more cutthroat, and I think this is one of them, to be honest. But still, I think actually we're getting to the point where I'm going to make a cut, to be honest with you, because the Misty Mountains are dawdling just a little bit too much for my liking. So here we go, we actually have some movement now, which, again, I'm kind of surprised, honestly, that the scenario maker decided to make it this way round, because that was a lot of dead time for no real reason there. Like, you could have just had the Misty Mountains deploy over there if all of the armies were allowed to freely move across there. I feel as though it would have been more interesting if the Dwarves were allowed to chase the Misty Mountains down. That would have given some sort of purpose for the Misty Mountains being out here in the first place. As it is, you may as well have just had all the Misty Mountains army deploy in there. But I don't know why I'm being overly critical of this scenario so far. I suppose it's just the fact that I'm preempting the fact that I fully believe the Mangonel is going to cause my game to crash at least once. But perhaps we should look on the bright side of things. But we've had a few charges. Initial probing assaults there from the Drake Broodlings and from the Bolgs champions, getting some damage done. But now that door has firmly closed shut, at least with Mevin, because he's got a lot of spears on the front line. Going to go back for another bite of the cherry, are we, with Lango going in with the Bolgs champions? But again, Sons of the Fallen are on the front line, so it's going to be very difficult. Like I said, like this is the issue. Like with the Misty Mountains willingly going into defensive shape like this, it's going to be much more difficult now to utilise units like the Bolgs champions, because they're out here on their own. The Dwarves are easily going to be able to zone them out. But we can also see that the first archer salvos from the Mountain Uruk archers are going to be coming forth and attacking WK's army. He, of course, will be immediately followed by Mr. Sneakman as well. So a lot of good archer companies over here. But the Dwarves, of course, Khazad-Dum probably the single best faction for absorbing arrow fire like this, with all of their armour, massive shields as well. Very, very tough to take down. Bolgs champions are going to go into the mountains, I suppose, and try and get in behind one of the armies. That would probably be for the best, but WK is immediately fanning out with his shield, so they're actually going to be... I mean, the opportunity for Lango to do that is closing, and in fact I think it has closed. He's now going to instead retreat, and he's going to find himself sort of hemmed in a little bit. You can see there's some Mountain Uruk coast over here again. I think this is a result of the bridges, the pathfinding being a bit screwy, and so these Mountain Uruk coast, instead of going across the bridge, the Medieval 2 pathfinding, instead it's going to make them go all the way around. To be honest though, I mean, it's fair game at this point. You've been charged by cavalry. These units, you can kill them if you want. There is a direct Mangonel hit. We're not going to zoom in on the Mangonel hits. I just don't trust them in Reforged. They've bitten me one too many times. But Eclipse is going to be using his Mangonel. I mean, King Amar's army is in full view, really. Orc Hunters and Warriors, though, are they really the biggest target? Maybe not. What about that one over there? The Dollar Elf's Mangonel, meanwhile. I mean, he definitely should, I think, go after Mevin's army, because there's a lot of Legion units in there. You can see there the fire rains down on the Sons of the Fallen. A little bit of it hit the 4th Legion Shield Guard as well. But yeah, going after the Sons of the Fallen, you can see a lot of good damage there. Very worthwhile to try and kill them off, if you are able. Bolgs champions going down into this dry moat. And now forward come the Drake Broodlings once again. The Dwarven miners are front and centre. But they are immediately going to get run through by the Drake Broodlings, unfortunately for them. A very unique unit that the Misty Mountains have access to, this one. Massive charge on them as well. You can see the fire still raining down in the background. Doing damage to the 4th Legion Shield Guard, but not as direct a hit as they were getting on the Sons of the Fallen previously. Speaking of which, that damaged unit is going to try and zone out the Volks Champions and the Drake Broodlings now. Mount Coaster's still there. I guess the dwarves are just sort of waiting. But I mean, I'd wonder why they're waiting, honestly. They're taking Mangonel fire. They may as well move forward and at least try and engage in the skirmish, because I mean, these archers are not going anywhere. You can wait as long as you want. And you can see over here, actually, that the Mountain Uruk archers are firing across still. I mean, this is one area where the battle is underway, with both sides engaging with their archers. And indeed, you can see moving across the bridge, one of the rams coming up from WK, actually, the warriors of Khazad-Dum pushing forward. But they are going to be blocked by their heavy goblin spears. And heavy goblin spears against the warriors of Khazad-Dum, yes, the AP will be useful, but with all of that range support, and also the warriors, I mean, the engagement's not great for them because they're stretched and in loose formation. The heavy goblin spears will probably actually do quite well here. Better than they would otherwise do. And if you can get some good value off with some more basic spears, then you're on to a good start here. Mangonel is moving across to these armies over here now. Dwarven miners in front and centre. I mean, the Dwarven miners might not be the worst thing to go after, because you're likely to kill them in high numbers with your archers. Whereas everything else, maybe not so much. Knocking over their own units here, the Drake Broodlings, as they run on through. Over here, meanwhile, King Ammar is now moving forward with his Orc Hunters, immediately going to be engaged, of course, by Inarius and his Heavy Goblin Archer firing squad. But it's going to be tough for King Ammar, I think, because he's going to have to move into the Goblin Archer fire, and the Orc Hunters are among the weaker troops for Khazad-Dum when it comes to taking arrow fire, but you don't have much of a choice in this situation, like I said. Like, when you start to attack, as long as you put pressure on multiple angles, ooh, that's a large amount of devastation inflicted there by the Mangonel, showering the miners in fiery death, as well as the 4th Legion Shield Guard, who are actually wavering at this point in time. 2 Mangonels might be a little bit overkill for the Misty Mountains in this situation, I have to say. I feel as though just the one would be sufficient, considering the level of choke points they're working with here, to be honest. And again, this is another example, I think, of something I'll talk about at the end with regards to maps. It's something that I mentioned to J-Monster on a podcast recently, but it boils down to people making these elaborate maps and then making them focused around a few choke points. Like, again, we'll see. Like, maybe the map will develop as the fight goes along. If the dwarves are willing to commit forward in a big way, maybe they can smash these defences quickly. But again, it's one of those pet peeves that I've developed recently, where every sort of new map, essentially, it looks impressive, but then when you boil it down, it's just 3 or 4 choke points. I don't want to be too much of a Debbie Downer on this, but I do hope that the map actually does utilise the settlement back here. I mean, work was put into this settlement. If we're just seeing fights around these bridges at the front, so much of that work goes to waste. Meanwhile, there's fighting noises happening over here, but I assume that's just because the Drake Broodlings ran over their own men. What's going on back here? Is the Mangonel still firing? I can't relax fully until the Mangonels are out of ammunition. Meanwhile, both units of Volks Champions are now over here, and going to try and get some charges off. The 4th Legion Shield Guard actually turning their backs on proceedings, turning around now. Mevin just trying to get them into position here. Orc Hunters also firing away. Is that Mangonel firing? No, it's not, so we can zoom in. There are trolls over here. Yeah, this Dwarven expeditionary force was lit up by the Mangonel, and then the Drake Broodlings and the trolls and the defensive line of Align Infantry was easily able to mop them up. Getting shot in the back, though. That's a good pick there from the Orc Hunters across the way, because they're going to be able to shoot into the backs of these shielded infantry, which won't, of course, then confer that shield value upon them. They're crossing the bridges over here. Warriors of Khazad-Dum, but again, only 98 of them. They're going to need to get more across the bridge, but interacting with bridges in Medieval 2 is so awkward and annoying. I'm honestly a proponent of when I would recommend, if you're making maps, not to use bridges at all. Because in Med 2, they make life so much more awkward than they need to be. Yes, they look neat, but mechanically, the value is just not there for me. It makes life very difficult for those who have to use them. Sons of the Fallen coming across, though, and they are going to be able to absolutely bulldoze these Mountain Uruk archers. They're going to need to get some more bodies in the way here, I think, Eclipse. Mountain Uruk archers largely out of ammunition at this point. Defeat seems certain against the Sons of the Fallen. I like this from WK. Now that they have a beachhead over here, they need to send more units forward in order to maintain this, because if they don't, then they're going to be forced back onto the bridge itself, and that's not where you want to be. I mean, yes, there's some AP coming in from the Mountain Orc Berserkers. The Orc Mangonel is still biding its time. I mean, at this point, the Mangonel can't afford to fire in here, really, because if you get friendly fire, the Misty Mountains are far more likely to break than Khazad-Dum are. Well, Snaga Skirmishes firing some Javelins into the warriors of Khazad-Dum, who are doing very well, actually, but they are going to be overwhelmed by a combination of Mountain Uruk Host and Heavy Goblin Halberdier, so more units are going to be required, but I mean, they'd probably be best off shooting the Snaga Skirmishes just to take the edge off that DPS, to be honest with you. Right, where is that Mangonel? I see him in the distance. They're not firing. Good, good, good. Yeah, so this fight obviously was very easy for the Misty Mountains as soon as that Mangonel hit came in. More units are coming across now, though. Dwarven Miners leading the way, and then Hammers of Gundabad to back them up. Orkhunts are firing in. I mean, with the Hammers of Gundabad in here, unbreakable, none of these units are going to be good against them. I mean, the Mountain Uruk Coast are better than Heavy Goblin Archers and Infantry, but all of them are going to get put in the ground by Hammers of Gundabad very easily. Cave Troll Drummers just back here, keeping the morale high, but I mean, they don't make units unbreakable, which is an important distinction. They just raise morale, so if they do start getting dumpstered, the Cave Troll Drummers will not be enough to stop a big rout. In come the Hammers of Gundabad now. Going to be backing up. All of this is AP, even the miners, of course, so they will be able to inflict some good damage onto this Misty Mountain defensive line. And best of all, this isn't a bridge, so Mevin and King Ammar, if he sends across units over here, will be able to avoid the fate that potentially is going to befall the dwarves over here, where the bridge does a lot of the defensive work for the Misty Mountains, which you could say is right. Bridge is, of course, not going to be the easiest entities to take. My main issue with them is pathfinding and how medieval 2 paths across them. Not the best. Warriors of Khazad-Dum still winning over here, though. Mountain Uruk Host and Heavy Goblin Halberds not really able to get into a good formation here to start combating them. The Snaga Skirmish is going to need to do the business, I think, here. Is that thing firing? It's not. Good. Hammers of Gundabad getting across here. Unbreakable, of course. Sons of the Fallen may very well be unbreakable as well. They were at one point, but I can't remember if that's still the case. More Mountain Uruk Archers are not going to be the answer here. And I mean, with WK forming this beachhead over here, with him going to be... Well, I mean, Mr. Sneakman is potentially going to be able to get some units across here as well as his army hoves into view. I don't think we will see just outer choke points. There are units ready to defend the settlement as well, which is good. I was worried for the fate of this this scenario if it was just going to be these choke points, but it won't be. And I'm very glad to see that. That Mangonel is now firing, so let's just back up just a wee bit. You can see the Orkhunts of Khazad-Dum still firing across into that defensive line. I mean, a lot of King Ammar's units are still quite a long way back. Iron Watch of Miramir as well, I didn't notice them actually. They will be a very useful tool. I mean, this is a 4v4 siege, so the attackers having access to the Iron Watch of Miramir could be very useful, because I mean, the goblins have got so much in the way of numbers, and with tools like crossbows, they're going to be able to do a good amount of damage to the dwarves as they try to move deeper into the settlement. Mangonel is still firing. Actually, no, it's moving now. Okay. Now we can move in a little bit closer. Another unit of Hammers of Gundabad. Actually, that's the same unit. The Dwarven Miners pushing in. The outer defense looking a little bit rickety, actually, and considering the amount of reinforcements that are nearby, that's kind of surprising to me, honestly. 3rd Legion Infantry are here. 4th Legion Shield Guard. I would send up... I mean, those 3rd Legion... Yeah, it's a full, healthy unit of 3rd Legion. I would maybe send up a unit of 4th Legion as well, just to make sure that any cavalry action is dissuaded, because there are still those Bolg's Champions units over there, which are still there. Oof. That is a special ability of some description, which is now a factor in these scenarios. I knew what it was for the infamous Gondor versus Umbar Prisoner scenario, but I don't know what they are here. I would imagine it's somewhat similar, so I would imagine for the dwarves it's making them tankier in the same way that it was for Gondor in that battle. For the Misty Mountains, I would imagine it's maybe more morale orientated, actually, to try and make up for the fact their morale is pretty poor. Meanwhile, over here you can see that Misty Mountains overwhelming this Dwarven force that was sent across here. It was doing quite well, but then overwhelming force was committed. What's going on over here? That Mangonel's still not firing. Good. Cave Trolls moving in, trying to deal with the Hammers of Gundabad. I mean, there's not many Hammers of Gundabad left, actually, but they need to be careful against the Cave Trolls. Legionnaires moving forward. There's blackbacks over here, so Eclipse is not yet ready to give up this position, but I think it's going to fall eventually, regardless of what he does at this point, because he surrendered a bit of the initiative earlier on, and that is going to allow the Dwarves to take some advantage. 4th Legion Shield Guard crossing the bridge, more units heading here. Sons of the Fallen doing really well, but now they're coming up against blackbacks. That may reverse their fortunes somewhat. More goblins heading out of the settlement now. And Black Uruks, of course. Not a huge force from King Ammar there, but enough that the goblins are still going to need to marshal that position. What is happening over there with the Mangonel? Where is the Mangonel even? There it is. Okay, so it's moving closer into position over here. Drake Broodlings are coming across, as are the Trolls. The Trolls won't be too much of a concern with Hammers of Gundabad on the front line, but the Drake Broodlings... I mean, the thing is, if they can keep moving, they'll be fine. But if they get bogged down in amongst all of these hammers, the spears are now on the way forward as well. Things could get a little bit messy. That there was the Dwarven bonus, I believe. And there goes another Orc bonus. Bulk Champions charging in. I mean, these miners are doomed. I'm a little bit surprised they're out in front, to be honest with you, because you're just throwing them away for no good reason. The spears should be out in front. They should be the ones taking the charge. That would completely negate the Bulk Champion's ability to do any kind of damage. Of course, if the Bulk Champions stay in melee for too long, those pickaxes could have an impact, but yeah. 2nd Legion still waiting their chance. Hammers, still a lot of good units left to come in this battle, of course, and I imagine there's going to be a pretty violent committal of units from the Dwarves fairly soon. Dollar Elf, Orc, Mangonel, we've got to keep an eye on that, because of course if we're too close to the impact sites, a crash is all but guaranteed. With the 4th Legion on the front line, that gives a little bit more solidity. Cavalry is not, well, Drake Broodlings are not going to want to come forward with a combination of shock infantry and spears here. Dwarven miners are routing though, so more units are going to need to be committed, and I think Mevin has been a little bit guilty of only moving units in when he starts to really struggle, which is the sign potentially of some poor judgment. But the Iron Watch of Miramir firing in, and that is going to do massive damage to the Misty Mountains front line. And while there may be one unit of miners that is routed off, that is going to do critical damage to the Misty Mountains defensive efforts. Over here, another expeditionary force sent across from King Ammar. Back in come the Snow Trolls, and against sentries, those Snow Trolls should be pretty good. Orc Hunters are firing in with their arrows, however, going to do a pretty decent amount of damage. Hammers of Gundabad crossing the bridge, but Heavy Goblin Crossbows actually getting up onto the one section of wall they can, and they have now got a good vantage point to shoot into those Hammers of Gundabad, so very nice there. Meanwhile, over here, still a very bloody fight. It has been a fight with a bit of an odd frame rate as well, hasn't it? That hopefully will dissipate as the battle goes on, although based on what Eclipse said, we might see this for the duration. Hammers of Gundabad are in here, of course, lock morale, more units coming across, some miners now from WK, just making sure they've got the numbers to keep this assault going, more AP, more damage, but I mean the Blackbacks are still on this front line. You can see the Sons of the Fallen have been largely completely dealt with by the Blackback Mountain Berserkers. Definitely the most devastating infantry tool that the Misty Mountains can bring to the fore. Rotting meat from the Mangonel, so it's possible that it's out of ammunition, at least I hope so, although it didn't seem to fire that many shots, so maybe it's just trying to lull them into a false sense of security. We shall see though. Black Uruks backing up the Blackbacks as well as the Mountain Uruk host. A lot of cave trolls coming in. They're keeping their trolls together in big clumps, the Misty Mountains, which does mean that they're more difficult to single out with all of this shock infantry, but I mean, sending in cave trolls willingly against Hammers of Gundabad is... Oof, and there you can see there is Iron Watch of Miramir over here somewhere, firing into that blob, and that's enough to cause the Heavy Goblin Spears to rout. So I mean, some decisions are going to have to be made here by the Misty Mountains. The longer they stay on open ground, and in retrospect, those Iron Watch of Miramir units were always going to be able to bust through the outer choke points, because there just isn't any cover out here for the Misty Mountains. They've done pretty well, the Misty Mountains, to do a lot of damage, but they've also taken a lot of damage in return. There are the Iron Watch of Miramir. Some units down in the moat. Some Sons of the Fallen. Over here, what is happening with that Mangonel? It's still not firing. You can see moving in some Sons of the Fallen. The Iron Watch did a lot of good damage over here. Some 2nd Legion are in here, but more just goblins upon goblins are being committed. Mountain Uruk host, Heavy Goblin Halberdiers, Trolls are moving in. And again, this does boil down to the fact that Mevin hasn't committed enough, I don't think. He's left gaps for the Goblins to exploit, and with Blackback Mountain Berserkers on the front line as well, even with the Iron Watch of Miramir doing the business a moment ago, this assault is in danger of falling apart, and considering he also had... I mean, yes, there are crossbows sideswiping him, yes, there are Mangonel fire, but he doesn't have to deal with the bridges like the others do. Yeah, this is a problem for the Dwarves of Khazad-Dum. They've definitely miscalculated here, and can't afford to do that. He's going to need to try and find a way of turning that around quite quickly, I think. Meanwhile, Orc Hunters of Khazad-Dum moving backwards. Or not moving backwards, sorry, they're moving in. And yeah, I mean, here you can see the Dwarves are making headway. Yes, there are crossbows firing at them. Sentries of Khazad-Dum going to take some damage there. Snow Trolls are going to move backwards, as are the Cave Trolls. But yeah, the Misty Mountains, I think, now should be the time where they look at it and go, okay, we've bled the Dwarves quite effectively in the outer defence. Now we need to pull back. Because the longer we stay out here, the more gaps the Dwarves are going to be able to find. In come the Drake Broodlings, but there are sentries here. And those pikes should be pretty good at dealing with the rampaging beasts. WK has secured this area. Mr. Sneakman, of course, has got his pretty much his full army. I mean, I'm sure he's committed the odd unit here and there, but he's going to have a fresher army, which means he can then take the lead at trying to take this settlement, which does have a lot of open space. But I don't think the Dwarves have got any artillery. I'd be very surprised. I don't think the Iron Watch of Miramir can break walls. It would be a neat feature if they could, perhaps. But speaking of which, the Iron Watch of Miramir are raining hell down upon what remains of the Misty Mountain force over here. And I think a large part of that is because they have pulled back now. Inarius sees that his allies are pulling back. If he stays here for too much longer, King Amar's going to be able to get into the back lines. So as well as they've done against Mevin over here, the Dwarves are going to pull back. The Mangonels have been abandoned. I think they had used up all their ammunition, to be fair. They don't have the most ammo for an artillery piece, the Mangonels. They haven't caused a crash either. So, glorious day. Heavy Goblin crossbows are still over here. Do they still have ammo? They don't, by the looks of things. They've done some good damage. Mevin's units are now moving forward. There's the Mangonel crew as they scurry away. And to be fair, the Dwarves aren't really the best at catching fleeing units. So they probably won't be in too much trouble. Here though, these crossbows are going to be able to pick and choose their targets, to be honest with you. It's a really nice defensive position they've got up here. Trying to cover their allies as they try and flee. There are still these bold champions out here, but it's pretty chaotic on the outer defence now. Good opportunity for the Dwarves to try and hunt down some stragglers and bring the casualty count into their favour. Orc Hunters moving in. Of course, they still have to get across these bridges, which means their reinforcements are probably going to run into a few issues as they do so. It's going to be interesting this though. It's a very interesting settlement layout. I mean, I think it's probably fair to allow the Dwarves to get in through the gate because these are very narrow choke points. They don't have siege weapons to break down these walls, and actually they're classed as buildings. Some of them are anyway. Some of them are classed as walls in all fairness, but without siege equipment to make more holes in the walls, I think it is more of an interesting battle if they move backwards. And you can see here, these are areas which skirmishes can be used for the Misty Mountains. Nice opportunity for crossbows and javelins potentially to do the business. But we shall see how much ammunition the Misty Mountains have already used up. Let's see. Blackback Berserkers are here. Moving back. I mean, the Dwarves are actually already moving in over here, which is surprising to me. I would have thought that they would have wanted to wait for their allies to be in position to attack from the other angles as well, but miners and sentries, they're being squeezed by White Uruk Fearmongers, so I would back the Fearmongers in this fight. They're definitely a useful unit to have against the Dwarves. Only the First Legion would be this thing that I would say is a hard counter to them. First Legion of pikes and armour piercing, so not only do they outrange, but they're capable of dishing out the damage against them. Meanwhile, these fleeing Black Uruks have been caught, and WK is going to be able to win a minor victory here. Be interesting to see if they come around this way as well. I think they probably should. I mean, yes, they're going to get pounded by those crossbows as soon as they come in, but when you're on the attack, you can't afford to just concentrate all your force in one place, and I'm sure they won't. These players know better. More miners coming in. Miners not really going to be the answer against this amount of fearmongers, but well, I mean, they're losing apparently. I'm not entirely sure why that would be. They should stabilise after a small period of time, I would imagine. Well, what is going on elsewhere? Dwarves of Khazad-Dum thinking about moving in, but then thinking better of it. Mevin maybe wants to get more of his army across here. Again, he's got so much of his army too far away. I mean, we're coming to the point where we're actually getting into the final 10,000 frames here. So I would imagine that, I mean, in particular, you can see, I think, that WK and Mr. Sneakman mean business. And I think that is, once again, a sign that Mevin needs to get his entire army across here and doing the same thing. Dragging your heels when your allies are really getting stuck in is going to result in you not positively contributing to your team. Well, huge blob this. Maybe a good opportunity for the Iron Watch of Miramir to shoot in here. I mean, that's what the Misty Mountains are trying to do, affecting the fight with Skirmishes. Snaga Skirmishes, obviously, still armor-piercing missiles, even if they are low damage. Very cheap as well, not too relevant in the scenario, though. Heavy Goblin Spears moving around. You can see the Dwarves starting to put some pressure on this side of things as well. Hammers of Gundabad moving in. 4th Legion Shield Guard are also here. I don't know, you know. I think it's going to be hard for the Dwarves if they don't attack all at once. They definitely have the tools. They're bringing forward their ram, which may be why they attack so quickly, because the gate was open. It's hard to tell because of course, the texture's not loading in properly, but the gate is there. Statues of Khazad-Dum. So there is stuttering going on. Oof, man. That is a massive blob fight. Again, we're getting into the... Anyone who's been here long enough to remember Horton's scenarios, they were always the sort of thing which boiled down into an ungodly choke point fight between thousands of units, which looks cool, but ultimately it does tax the game an awful lot. And it obviously had a pretty catastrophic impact on the frame rate. WK moving across here. Mevin is still dragging his heels. Like, I don't want to harp on him too much, but you really do need to start moving in at this point. Like, you're offering your team nothing by being all the way back there. Victory seems certain for Khazad-Dum at this point, so they are bringing in more and more Legion units, and basic heavy goblins are going to struggle. The Javelins are not really able to get volume of fire in there. They're going to be doing damage slowly but surely, but still. Sentries of Khazad-Dum, so they've got their ram closer, but they're still not too eager apparently to move in. The carcasses of those mangonels abandoned. I think I'm going to see why the frame rate is probably going to suffer here in the late game, because I would imagine it's going to be because of large pushes. Because there's still, I mean, we're approaching the point where, honestly, a game normally would be, you would see the final assault already underway in a scenario of this size, but the Dwarfs still haven't fully committed. A lot of their units are still far away, like I said. Out come the Bolgs champions. I like this from the Misty Mountains. I like the fact that the Dwarves, like, they're a bit disjointed. Take matters into your own hands. Commit your cavalry out there. Don't allow them to just take things at their own pace. Charge in, do some damage. Here goes the Iron Watch. That's going to be really devastating. Not only for the Misty Mountains, to be fair, there's going to be some friendly fire in there. But I do think it's worthwhile. I mean, here the Bolgs champions, so they're open. Open for an attack. Only 2 of them took the brunt of that charge, though, because the unit is ultimately a little bit scattered. That's unfortunate for Lango, because I think he should have been rewarded a little bit more than just killing off a handful of them. But the scattered nature of the unit there meant that he wasn't able to maybe get the value that he could otherwise have got. Some trolls in the background over there. There's still the heavy goblin crossbows over here. Ah, I see. So these are the Edoras style walls where you can use the ram on the outer walls. Okay, that makes things a little better for the attackers. Gives them potentially ways in. And they are now going to flood in through the settlement, and I don't think the Misty Mountains were entirely prepared for this. Mr. Sneakman and WK definitely being on the front foot here, which I like to see. They're going to move in and potentially wash over the settlement here if the Misty Mountains aren't careful. They're committing more units to the front over there, which means they're going to need to commit units to stop this assault. Otherwise they're going to get hit in the back. Those Snaga Skirmishes are wide open for assault, and the miners are flooding in. Now would be the time for Mevin to start attacking from the other side as well. He is starting to move his units forward now. That is an Orcish ability. Definitely. I don't know what it's done to them, but it's buffed them in some meaningful way on an army-wide level. Black Oaks, the mountains rolling forwards. Again, another general falls. It is from the guards of Khazad-Dum, so it's out here somewhere. Where are those Bolgs champions? Are they over here somewhere? I guess we shouldn't get too hung up on them, but still a good catch there. A good general snipe. Khazad-Dum have got good morale, generally speaking, so they were over here. So it's not going to have a catastrophic impact on them by any means. Still, these crossbows are on the thing, and the thing is, dawdling in range of these crossbows at this point is going to prove to be a real negative for the dwarves moving forward, because they're allowing the Misty Mountains to just get some free shots off. Oof. Yeah, this is definitely one of those crunchier battles where the frame rate is going to be certainly spottier. But yeah, these little raised bridges. It's not the first time we've seen something like this. We've seen it in an elven settlement one time before as well, and they were able to use them to good effect there. But having crossbows up on them when the dwarves aren't really able to respond to them is going to allow them to get some good value off. The thing is, I think Mr. Sneakman and WK have done a really good job of sort of flooding in at this point. If anything, I think maybe, I would say go even further. Oof. I don't know what is causing that. There's something on the map which is really doing the frame rate no favours whatsoever. Hopefully that doesn't prove to be too much of a problem moving forwards in the battle. In come the 3rd Legion. Heavy Goblin crossbows. Going to be firing away. Still firing at, what is the 2nd Legion Axe Guard? Yeah, it's a good target to go after. They're damaging. Definitely a threat. And it will, again, force Khazad-Dum into being a little bit quicker with what they're doing. I mean, Bevin really has no excuse to not move in now, because the Misty Mountains are sort of really pulling back, really forming up a final stand over here. Yeah, this definitely, with the frame rate being what it is, it definitely puts me in mind of one of Horton's scenarios. Or the old Rangers when they caused blood spray to go up, only it's a little bit more consistent than that. Hopefully it doesn't get quite as bad as Sirithun Gol gets. That map of course is infamous for its frame rate dropping through the floor in the late game because of the architecture. It's not from an architecture point of view this time though, I don't think, or at least not architecture destruction. It might have something to do with how the buildings and such have been implemented, but I'm not sure. I mean, the Misty Mountains still have a lot of units back here, and they can definitely afford to form up a very nice defence. I think for the remainder of this battle, though, I would like to zoom in, but it's gonna cause too many frame rate issues, I think. There are the cave trolls. I mean, you can see the dwarves are moving in. I mean, Dwarven miners are here. 3rd Legion infantry. Custom reclaimers. They have the tools. They have axe throwers, which can be used to try and clear some of those heavy goblin crossbows off the walls. But there's still a lot of Blackback Mountain Berserkers. A lot of it may have to do with the units that are on display as well. I mean, stats-wise, there are a lot of beefy units here, condensed into one area, and that is something which may be contributing to the frames. I'm not sure. Like, I would have thought that unit size would have been more of an impacting factor there. Cave Trolls pulling back. Bevin's army is going to come forwards as well. Interesting to see, actually. I mean, Eclipse did tell me that going down to half speed would sort of help or fix the problem. It hasn't fixed the problem, I have to say. I mean, it's made it slightly more bearable. So we're going to have to, I think, go down to half speed for the remainder of this fight. It will be a little bit more palatable, I think, than going up to 1 speed, but this will of course mean that the pace of the battle is going to be significantly lower. But the White Uruk Fearmongers are fighting on the front line alongside the Black Uruks of the mountains. There are trolls involved as well. Really at this point it's going to come down to just pure muscle on the front line and who wins that. That's normally a fight you would back Khazad-Dum in, especially if they're able to get their 1st Legion pikes onto the front. I do think that the Goblins will start to struggle if that's the case. The crossbows are going to be a massive factor though. If they can get into good positions, which they have up till this point, they should be able to do the business here. Oof, man, that is vile, isn't it? It's unfortunate, it really is, because this is a nice looking map, but clearly there are some mechanical problems going on here. And I was aware of this before I started doing the replay, so I did kind of expect there to be some kind of frame drop. I didn't know how severe it would be. I mean, I've seen worse, but it's not fantastic, to be honest. 3rd Legion Infantry are fighting on the front line. It's better than a crash, I will say. It's better than the Mangonel ending my whole existence. But it's really nasty to move the camera around in a battle that this is happening in. And yeah, it is worth saying that half speed isn't really adding much to the situation. So we'll go back up to 1 speed. It's like viewing it at half speed anyway when the frame rate does this anyway. I'd be interested to see if that was due to in-game reasons as well. If Eclipse told me, then I would assume that something in-game clued them into this. Maybe the frame rate in the game was pretty bad as well. Yeah, this does put me in mind of Minas Morgul, unfortunately. And I can only assume that the culprit is newly implemented unique architecture, if that's the case. There's really nothing else that I can lay the blame at. Meanwhile, these heavy goblin crossbows still firing away. I mean, there are still miners left alive. There's a lot of units up on this hill that the Misty Mountains can still commit, including Goblin King's Bodyguard. Maybe not the best against Khazad-Dum units. In comes Mevin. Ooh. Mevin's going to be moving in. Okay, I know what I'm going to do here. Because the frame rate has actually gotten so bad that it's basically a slideshow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut back in when we reach about 28k frames. Okay, so I'm going to pop back in every 1,000 frames essentially to just let you know how the battle is progressing. So you can see there are cave trolls on the front line. You can see there's more reinforcements being filtered down. It is going to be whoever can bludgeon the other team to death. As we sort of rotate our way around here, we can see that it's much the same sort of situation over here as Mevin is starting to commit his soldiers in to fight against Dollar Elf's position. In fact, I will reposition the camera a little bit, but you can see how bad the frame rate is. I don't think Eclipse was quite aware of how bad it might get, but yeah, this is on the same level as the late game in Kyritham Gol. This is on the same level as Minas Morgul, as basically the joint worst frame rate I've seen. And I think this really does, it's a bit of a red flag. Like, if you think there's going to be frame rate issues, it's probably not going to be worth showing in the end, purely because of stuff like this. Like, I can make this work for now because the battle itself is not really going to be decided by anything other than brute strength. So if we look at it from here, we're going to be able to tell who's going to come out on top and who's not. But in battles that are a little bit more dynamic, like the infamous one from Minas Morgul, it becomes more of an issue. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to stop back in every 1,000 frames, and then we'll re-evaluate how things are going for both sides. So we're back again at 27,000 frames, and we can see here that not much has changed other than the fact that the Misty Mountains have managed to start to crush in on the side of Mevin's lines. You can also see they're trying to do the same over here. I would say that, you know, the balance of forces evenly matched in most places. Goblin King's Bodyguard and Blackback Berserkers definitely shoring things up against the Dwarves. Otherwise, I would have imagined the Phalanx units, especially the 1st Legion, would be a real issue. The Dwarves have also managed to squeeze their way into these towers and obviously come along these bridges with a singular unit of Khazad-Dum Reclaimers, but they are very limited in number, and I would imagine that the Misty Mountains are going to be able to turn them back pretty quickly. There's still obviously some fast movers running around in here, the Bolgs Champions. Obviously the Cave Trolls are still causing havoc in the back lines over there, which is going to be interesting to see if that makes a big impact. Of course, if Mevin's assault falls apart, then the other Dwarves are going to be in a big heap of trouble as well, I would suggest. There's still those heavy goblin crossbows up there on the bridges, which is going to allow them obviously to keep shooting in to the units that are just below them. Whether the arc of fire is good or not is debatable. But still, I would say the Misty Mountains are actually in a pretty good position here. They're definitely doing the right things. If the Dwarves are going to start gaining the upper hand, I would imagine it would be because of the quality of their units rather than how they've been positioned and moved forward. So here we are at 28,000 frames, and you can see here that obviously there isn't a great deal of movement still, but you can also see the Dwarves are starting to sneak their way around, and I do think, in fact, that over here on Mevin's front, the Misty Mountains are starting to run low on manpower. A lot of heavy goblin halberds on the front line. I think the Dwarven quality is telling over there. And over here, we also had a general die in the mix over here for the Dwarves, and actually the Dwarves are losing over on this front, which might be fairly significant, or at least they're losing in places according to the game, which obviously you can't really buy too much into, especially with units in the background over there on the way, like the Legion Bodyguard from the Sneak Mount. So I do actually think the Dwarves, especially with this little expeditionary force that managed to force its way onto the bridges as well, into the back lines, preventing the likes of these Goblin King Bodyguard, like they will win over here if no Dwarves reinforce, but these units could be much better used on the front line for the Misty Mountains, and I do think the Dwarves are slowly but surely gaining the upper hand, and so I would imagine their quality should be enough to see them over the line. But we shall see. I mean, I know this is a rather unorthodox way of covering the battle, but I don't think there's really much of a choice considering the relative speed that things are moving at, and moving the camera causes the game to really slow to a crawl, so it really can't be helped. I'll see you at 29,000 frames. So, the penultimate phase back in at 29,000 frames, and I think at this point it's fair to say I think the Dwarves are going to win. Slowly but surely they have been crushing the Misty Mountains resistance on the front lines. You can see that Bevin's army simply had too much left for the rather thin defence they had over here, and the Misty Mountains have now buckled. There's units in behind. There's also been reinforcements that have been sent up here, so more resources have had to be committed, and obviously that means there's less resources for the front line. And of course, the Dwarves, I mean, they're still being fought pretty hard down here. The Dwarves are still a lot for them to get through, but ultimately, I don't think the Misty Mountains have got really much of a prayer at this point. They don't have enough quality, they don't have enough numbers. Khazad-Dum are ultimately going to have enough left in the tank to win this battle. And yeah, I think the Misty Mountains have given it a good go, but I think ultimately it may also come down to the fact that these frame issues, while I would almost guarantee they're more pronounced here on my screen for what I'm showing, I would imagine that they were also a big part in the game itself as well, which of course, when it comes down to that, players will often then just sort of mash their units in because they can't really micro too hard, and that's exactly the kind of warfare that in particular Khazad-Dum are going to excel in. And you can see there, the town centre has been captured, and I don't think they're going to be able to recapture it either, the Misty Mountains. So yeah, they don't really have enough quality left to force a unit of Hammers of Gundabad off the TC. When I say that, they just did, but I mean, ultimately the town centre would fall if the army doesn't get completely destroyed. I'm actually quite interested to see which one of those happens first, because the Misty Mountains should still be able to hold on the front line for a decent amount of time yet, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless, I'll rejoin you when the battle is nearing its very end at 30,000 frames. So we're going to rejoin, I think, just before the 30k frame mark, because it is the end of the battle after all, and you can see now that Bevin's forces are starting to get into the back lines of the remaining Goblins that are over there, and that's obviously causing them to break. Even the mighty Blackback Mountain Berserkers starting to break off now, although that could be due to the fact that Dollar Elf may have just admitted defeat, I'm not sure. But yeah, the Dwarves are going to win this game. It is going to be fairly close though, the Dwarves aren't going to have much left, and it is a shame because this was actually a battle of decent quality. It's just a shame that we couldn't really watch the nitty-gritty when we got here to the final stand, but I have some thoughts on that, which we talk about when the battle is actually over. You can see there's obviously a lot of dead all across the face of the map as well. And it is a good map as well. I do quite like the layout of this fortress because it's open, but there's a few things like these bridges that you can put your skirmishes on, both near the gates and within the Suttons itself, that gives it a different dynamic. They can also be used as attacking avenues as well, which I like. So it gives potential ways for both sides to use them. Though of course mechanically there are certain things that will need to change, of course. But Khazad-Dum and their pure might are going to be enough to ultimately win the day this time, and they will reclaim their mine and presumably reopen it in double quick time, although I don't think there's many actual Dwarven miners left alive. I think the vast majority of the contingent of Dwarves that are remaining are going to be stronger units like Hammers of Gundabad, First Legion, and the Khazad-Dum units as well. But yeah, a bit of a shame, this one, I would say. There's no real way that I can spin this to make it positive in terms of the frame rate issues. Eclipse did warn me of them, however, and I would say that the key here when it comes to talking about the frame rate is all of the Misty Mountains armies have now been to defeat, so it's only now a case of just waiting for us to see the end game screen. He did say that maybe half speed would sort it out, but it doesn't, not when the frame rate is this bad, and I would say that's because it may be okay when you're playing in the game on low settings and half speed sort of makes things just that little bit more easy to digest. But when we're talking about replays, things are a little bit more... When the settings are up higher and so on and so forth, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. There's no real way that I can fix this frame rate issue because it is rooted in problems that are happening within the actual game itself. And based on the fact that this frame rate is every bit as bad as Minas Morgul or Cirith Ungol tends to get, I would assume the blame lies at the foot of the architecture, and it did only start happening this way when the walls and the gates started to fall, which is interesting. There's no textures that have loaded in on the walls or the gates, and so the problem may lie there this time. We won't even get to see which armies did the best out of all of them. I would say... Yeah, it's pretty hard to tell, really, because the kill counts are so varied, but neither side really... I think Bevin is probably the one who... Well, actually, no, Bevin did very well when his army did very well when the settlement got into the grindier fight, so he may actually be one of the stronger armies. It's completely impossible to tell, especially considering the fact that it's very difficult to see whose units are doing what in the late game when the frame rate is this poor. But I would say I think that the Dwarves deserve their victory because early on they were able to force the Misty Mountains back from the potentially very lucrative bridge choke points, and that's obviously going to be something which they could really use in their favour, especially if they get the Mangonel into action, causing those that fiery death to essentially implant itself on the bridge as you march across it. And that obviously would be really, really bad for the Dwarves because obviously quality is a big part of what they do, because they had a smaller army here than the Misty Mountains. It was very close, to be fair. You know, all of them had around sort of the 2800, I should say, manpower count mark. But Misty Mountains generally going over that, and Khazad-Dum generally just below that. So they did have a numbers advantage here, the Misty Mountains, on the defence, but ultimately it was quality that won the day. And when you get involved in a slightly narrower fight within the settlements, that's always going to be Khazad-Dum's game. And ultimately, so it proved to be. Let's have a little look at what did the damage for these units. So the Mangonel did very well, as you would expect. In this situation where you have to attack into a Mangonel, it can be so deadly if you don't try and go around it. Heavy Goblin Crossbows did quite well as well, obviously getting into nice vantage points later on in the battles. White Uruk Fearmongers did okay on the front line as well. Everything else getting relatively standard fare. Mountain Uruk Host, fairly standard for them. Blackback Mountain Berserkers did very well. Heavy Goblin Halberds actually broke 100, which is impressive against Dwarves. Once again, though, the crossbows, ranged units in general. The Trolls proving to be a bit of a pain, but ultimately, yeah, armour piercing and pole arms and ranged units all doing the business, which is what you'd expect, 'cause in close quarters, that's where the Dwarven advantages really ring true. Snaga Skirmishes doing quite well for themselves, so again, a ranged unit, phalanx units. Crossbows, 381 on those crossbows. Those Bolgs Champions did very well. I'd assume this is Lango because I think he used his Bolgs Champions very, very nicely. I think this is another army that had the Bolgs Champions in it as well, though. No? Where was the other Bolgs Champions? No, only 47, so yeah. I'd say that Lango's Bolgs Champions were definitely the stronger ones. Orc Mangonel doing well once again. Yeah, ranged units, pole arms, artillery. All the things that you have to use as the Misty Mountains to try and get an edge in the melee fight against the Dwarves. And ultimately, while they did do that to a certain extent, they weren't able to do it universally throughout the field, and that is why ultimately the Dwarves have been able to reclaim this territory from the foul Goblins. So yeah, big thank you to Eclipse for sending this one to me. I know that mechanically the game let us down a little bit there because, again, I would assume it's the architecture, because it did seem to come into play when the gates and the walls had some holes put in them. And this kind of frame rate issue is something I've only ever had in the past when it's been unique architecture that hasn't really worked out. Obviously Minas Morgul and Cirith Ungol, like I've said several times now, probably the main culprits of that, and I'd say that this map is also falling into that category as well. And that may be because of some texture issues. Obviously we can see the textures haven't loaded in. It might have something to do with that. It might even be the fact there was a unique model that was supposed to load in, because I can't imagine, like, the gates are still there, so there are gatehouses around this, so the Dwarven settlement clearly was meant to have walls. I can't imagine the Dwarves would be too happy to put up a palisade around one of their settlements. That wouldn't really be too fitting. So it might be that they had sort of like a unique Dwarven wall that they put in that ultimately didn't load in, which may have caused the issues. It may have been the culprit, like I said. I'm not sure. Maybe Eclipse can shed some light. So I would imagine there was frame problems within the game as well for him to warn me about them. Ultimately, however, I doubt they were as bad as was experienced here. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been able to get to the end of the game. But it would be interesting if he could shed some light on that. But it's definitely not his fault, like sending a battle in like this. Obviously, you never really know how it's going to react when you put it through a replay. On this occasion, obviously, we got unlucky, but it's a rare occurrence that a map throws up this problem. So we'll see if we see this map in the future, if these issues can be addressed. But yeah, big thank you to Eclipse for sending this replay to me, and a big thank you to all of the players, all of the usual suspects here, once again, for taking part in this game. As for what's next, I do have a Silmarillion replay that I could do, a nice big 4v4. And also I have a couple more battles that I could do in Reforged as well. So battle replays wise, we've got some options that we could proceed with. Obviously, like I said, the stream, which is touted to happen on what should be Friday, I hope it will be Friday anyway, the next stream, will be, I think, in Silmarillion, because I think J Monster may very well have the House of Fingolfin in a playable state by then, so we can do a little preview with them involved. If not, then we'll play it by ear, because obviously, you know, he wants to have them done by then, but there's every chance that maybe they're not. Development obviously can throw up unforeseen issues, as I well know. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see with that. But I would imagine the next stream, regardless, will be Silmarillion. Hopefully we can get J Monster into the voice chat as well, because obviously he unfortunately missed the last stream. We started and then he arrived late, so unfortunately we were already rolling by the time he arrived. So hopefully we can get something going there. If not, maybe we can bring someone else in. Again, these things are all changeable. Like, I'm still rather new to streaming. Like, I am quite aware of, having watched my streams back, that something that I do need to do is to put some sort of background sort of tunes in, so there's not so much dead air, because of course I cannot turn up the music in game like I could do with anything else, like Warhammer 2 for example, because YouTube would strike my channel down in double quick time, with WB being very protective of their Lord of the Rings copyrights. So we cannot get away with turning the in-game music up, unfortunately. But hopefully, well, I'll look into a few things that I can do to maybe rectify that issue before the next stream, because dead air is the last thing we want. It's more of an issue if I'm commentating on my own, to be honest with you, and I'm trying to jointly commentate and concentrate on the game while talking constantly. If I had someone else in with me, I think the lack of music would become less of an issue, but there's still overall a bit of a lack of volume, so that will be something that I'm trying to work out before Friday rolls around. But yeah, enough waffling on my part. The next thing that comes out will be another battle replay, I believe. I think this replay is actually slated to come out on the Thursday, so it might be the fact that the stream is on the very next day. In which case, after the stream, there will be a battle replay. Whether that's in Silmarillion or Reforged really kind of depends on what I'm able to record in the coming days. So, or what I feel like recording in the coming days anyway. I'm sure they're mostly the same size, to be honest. But yeah, once again, big thanks to all the players and to Eclipse for making this replay happen. I hope you enjoyed this for what it was, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.